Hey everybody, this is D and Mike, and this is the next campaign diary for DOIP. I think we just finished up session 4. I think we're going into session 5. Let's go ahead and put the stats up now because they are redonkulous. Look at it. Look at those natural 20s. I think, oh gosh, I don't have my notes in front of me. I think it's like 16 or something outrageous. And then when you look at the natural ones, it's only like 4, maybe 5 at the most. We were all over the place. And I have to say, a lot of those natural 20s were mine. All mine. Well, not all mine, but a good 75% of them were. And I tell you, these natural 20s had a huge impact, obviously, on the table during the combat that we had, but ultimately flipped and changed the entire night. But we also had a record joke count, up to 10, I believe. Most of those jokes were not mine this time. They were everybody else's, so they were really, really funny. Some of them I didn't catch. There was just so much going on Saturday night. It was just a very, very busy table. Now, we played for, I think, like 6 hours, 7 hours. I can't remember if we ended at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, close to 2 o'clock in the morning. It was really a long time. 3 of those were in Fallon itself. The last 3 were just all combat, a single combat encounter, and that was at Butterskull Ranch. Now, the first time I played this, it's interesting, kind of similar results happened. I don't know if this is like this for you, if you're playing this as a DM, but Butterskull Ranch, I don't know what it is. It's the layout, it's the orcs that are there, whatnot. There was a tug of war the first time I played this, but this time it was kind of that same idea where there was this tug of war, like suddenly I was just kicking ass for like the first 2 hours of the combat, and then, well, actually more than that, probably around 2.5 hours. And then the last 20, 30 minutes just flipped on its head. And it was all not because of me or the players or anything like that. Like, I mean, a little bit, I'll say like 25% of our strategies and whatnot. But it really was the dice that suddenly flipped the entire table. Now let's look at this, okay? Let's just look at this real fast. Here is the Orcs, right? Now this is straight out of the Monster Manual. This is their hit points and their AC and their typical loadout. Now I love Orcs in my campaigns, and I outfit them with different things. I think as a DM sometimes you kind of forget about that. We just take it out of the Monster Manual. We don't outfit them with anything new or different. We just take them as is. But I decided to give them longbows instead of javelins, and I doubled their HP, and sometimes giving them a little bit more and a little bit less. I did a very much a variant kind of roll. I think if you max them out, they're like around 25 to 26 hit points. Well, I did that, doubled it in some cases, tripled it to make sure people were at different levels. So every time you hit a hork, it was never the same. Some guys would go down a bit faster, but most were staying pretty consistent. They were staying on the battlefield longer and longer and longer. Now, some of this stuff comes from my just history of just things I've learned in playing like Rise of Tiamat and Horde of the Dragon Queen when I got 5 players, and even at level 3 they could be a force to be reckoned with. And most things, I mean, right off out of the gate you think they're tough, and nope, those players will knock them down left and right. So this was kind of a culmination of, running those campaigns and running Dragon's Vice Pirate Peak before, and realizing, look, 5 people at level 3 is a force, and they can be really, really deadly, especially with the different powers everybody had. They're using stuff out of the, I don't know, that Witch's Cauldron book, whatever it is. So they had different powers, unique powers. They were teleporting around the battlefield. There was wild magic involved. There was a lot of different things. Some creatures, even the bear, was transformed to 3 times his size. So I knew that I was going to be dealing with some very interesting things. So it was right out of the gate. I had doubled their HP and actually gave them a little bit more, because most of these players are hitting with like 15 to 20 right out of the gate if they get a good hit. If they get a critical hit, that's even worse. So there's a little bit of the mechanics, some of the things I was thinking about when I was setting up this encounter. But the orcs should be a force to be reckoned with. They're not something that can be, steamrolled every time you come into them. I really wanted them to be like, they're organized, and they are not going anywhere. They are trying to take over territory. They're fighting to the death. But let's go back a bit. We started in Fallon, right? And we were there for a good 2.5, almost 3 hours, something like that. And it was a lot of fun. There was just a lot of role-playing going on. There were a couple things they just had to wrap up before they could just leave. They were waiting for armor to be finished and some weapons to be finished or to be silvered. Not a lot, just like 1 in this case. But I know the thief was still waiting for his armor to be finished, and it was completed. There was a couple things like potions that needed to be picked up and whatnot. I think the players had a good time at just in Fallon, goofing off. It was a night of tomfoolery, if anything. The Grok and Seamus, who transformed into a bear, had a knockout wrestling brawl outside of the inn where people were coming out and were taking bets and whatnot as they kind of phoned in this wrestling match just to have fun, and also just to kind of rake in a little extra coin. While they were doing that, of course, the thief was going around fleecing everybody, and that was kind of fun, small little skill challenge that was going on at the same time as these guys were fighting each other, which were basically strength checks and grapple checks and dex checks against one another, as they kind of really phoned it in. They were basically like real wrestling. They were just faking it. That'll be the first comment I get on this video. What do you mean wrestling's fake? Anyway, so they were having a good time with people doing that while the thief was doing some pickpocket and stealth, sleight of hand skill checks along the way. In that case, I had him just rolling a D12, and that's how much gold he got per skill check, because the people of Fallon aren't rich, so you're not really gonna get a lot, but hey, every coin counts, I guess, really. But there were all kinds of little deals made and whatnot, so it was a good role-playing moment. But there was I think there was a moment where I was looking around and going, I think I've just lost control of this table, because everybody was just like over here wrestling, and he was stealing stuff, and Naya was going through and trying to chase down potions, and it was just like so much information coming at me. It's just one of those nights where it was just like everything was on fire. But I did, of course, give him the exposition of, okay, look, we need Axholm. There's a place out there that we possibly could hide, maybe even fight the dragon at. And also there's another place, Butterskull Ranch, we haven't heard from for a long time. And there was actually going to be a third location, but we didn't quite get into that. But I presented them with these two options, and there actually was a good 10-minute debate. And I just kind of Pontius Pilate. I just kind of wiped my hands of it, washed my hands of it, and said, I'm out. And had them just try to figure it out at the table what direction they wanted to go. I think the majority wanted to go to Axholm, I believe, and the thief wanted to go to Butterskull Ranch. I think that was the opposing forces, or whatever. It could have flip-flopped there. But they did ask Carson, and I was a little reluctant to give advice, but Carson, I think, in character, was like, look, we need a place to hole up, so Axholm, I think, is important to me. But in the end, they decided just to roll for it. Like a 1 to 10, we go this direction, 11 to 20, we go that direction. And they ended up going to Butterskull Ranch. Now, Butterskull Ranch is not something you can just do a hop, skip, and a jump and go to. It's like 70 miles away from Fallon. So they got horses, they set out, they had to camp overnight, and this is where the witch Marigold showed up. Not a Coneyberry, which is, my first playthrough, that's where actually she materialized and talked to the party and warned them about the orcs and whatnot. This time she did show up a little bit in just a different location along the grasslands, the Tribord Trail, I believe, there. And she gave them intel. She told them about the orcs that are at Butterskull Ranch and they are taking over. And 2, that Axholm has a master, that Axholm is not empty. The queen of Axholm is this banshee who's roaming the halls and preventing people from taking over this location or even entering the location practically. So when they go there, to be prepared for this kind of ghostly encounter and other creatures that may be living there. Now, she cut a deal with the thief, Beazle. Nobody else wanted to do this, right? She was giving good intel, but she wanted something in particular. Around the banshee's neck is a crystal, and she wanted this crystal for her stone circle inside Neverwinter Wood that the orcs had kind of taken over and were draining and kind of destroying as they were summoning something to this stone circle. Now that's her territory. The orcs kind of swarmed in after the dragon entered the realm, and now they've kind of taken over and they're attacking locations, including Marigold's locations as well, taking over practically her home territory. Now nobody wanted to make this deal, but Beazle said, look, I'll make the deal with you. I'll get you that crystal. And if you do that, you show us, a way to defeat the dragon, which was part of her deal. So they shook hands. They cut their hands, shook hands over a black candle. Now I've talked about this in my what I use for Dungeons and Dragons videos, and I did talk about a couple books, one of them being Cole the Conqueror or Cole the Atlantean or something like that, and Conan books, Robert E. Howard. But there actually is a short story in there where a bunch of thieves get together and they make a pact over a black candle, and that's always kind of stuck out to me. So I just kind of stole it from that book. I highly recommend those books, by the way. So the deal was cut, and they show up at Butterskull Ranch, and wow, this is where the tug of war began. Now, there's a lot of ways you could go into Butterskull Ranch. You could go just barreling through if you wanted to. You could spy out the location. You could stealth, which may or may not, work the entire time, or brute force it. And they did get a surprise round. They did kind of set themselves up, scout out location. They couldn't quite see everything, but they could see a couple orcs there. But we had one surprise round, and then we went right into combat. And this is where my dice were on fire. Just flaming balls of fire, okay? Now, jumping ahead a little bit here, but I killed 3 out of 5 people, and there was a moment there where I really felt like, look, they're going to retreat. I'm going to be taking prisoners, or I'm going to kill everybody. Like, this is just how it's going to go down, because all those orcs are really starting to converge just in this one location. I mean, it all happened like in this small near the blacksmith outhouse area. Just everything kind of moved into that direction. And there were a couple times I was going to have the orcs actually leave. Like, they just this is okay, we've had too much. Too much is going on here. We've kind of lost too many people. But what would happen is bloodlust would kick in. I would knock down 1, maybe 2 heroes, and they were like, wait, we ain't going anywhere. We're winning. So they would stay, and they would keep pushing forward. And the longbows, forgive me, kicked ass, because they had javelins too. Anyway, either way, I would have and did fight at range. But the longbows were very, very deadly, and they were there on purpose. Now, for a while there, it did feel like, they were going to be okay. They were starting to take people out. Grok was teleporting above people, which was kind of funny. We had to figure out a lot of mathematics that night. He'd teleport above an orc and then fall down directly on him, knocking them prone, taking a little bit of damage and whatnot, things like that. We had the bear. Seamus changed into a bear, and then Gib, I keep putting an L in there. Gib would shoot, I can't remember now if it's I think it's a spell, and it enlarges the creature like 2 or 3 times its size. So the bear was just enormous. And also it hit harder and it weighed more. So there's a lot of weird mechanics that came out because of that. I mean, he was trampling people, and I think at one point they teleported him or something. I want to say that's what happened, and he was above somebody, and we had to figure out what's it like to have 1,800 pounds drop on you. We pretty much figured, yeah, you'd be dead. There were just a lot of little things like that, and trampling somebody, charging and trampling. We had to go into the monster manual and try to find a creature that did that, so we could at least have some basis for a rule. Sometimes I think as a DM, as you're looking at those kinds of things, and it looks cool and it sounds cool on the table, but then you realize, okay, well, that's a tactic most likely that's going to be used over and over and over again. I don't want to just make up a ton of crap on the spot and forget about it. We need to find something in the monster manual maybe, or just some common sense kind of things that we can apply to this every single time. Because that's what happens, right? As DMs, the player finds something unique that they can do, and it's kind of made up on the spot, and you got to find some rule that works with it. So I think we used a rhinoceros or something. I can't remember now. I remember we looked at elephants too, but I think it was a rhinoceros, his charge attack and whatnot. And we removed some damage from that. But the enemy gets a dex saving throw and can kind of get out of the way, as anybody would do when something is charging them. But there were a lot of times Saturday night where we had to stop and be like, okay, how do we rule on this? And it's just a bit of advice as a DM, I just open up to the table. Sometimes I think I have good ideas on how we can do things. Other times, I have no clue. But we got to find something, because I guarantee you, it sounds like these tactics are going to be used over and over and over again. But here's what started to happen. Again, I was rolling a lot of natural 20s, and I kept my orcs at range. Now, a few of them got caught up because they were just close by. One in particular, token number 5, the orc, he just stayed alive round after round after round, and he was getting hit, and he didn't have a hell of a lot of hit points. Of course, he was doubled, but that boy just hung on through the entire encounter and was left with only 7 hit points for 4 rounds. He just kept dodging. They would just miss him. He just kept going and going and going. So it was actually kind of funny, because it was him, number 5, and Naya going back and forth, and just could not kill him, because sometimes you just couldn't hit him. So it was just all over the place, and my natural 20s were just kicking ass. And they really did get to the point where I had knocked down 3 people. And what do we have left? We have the halfling and the gnome. And that's when I thought, okay, they're going to run away. I'm going to be taking prisoners. Matter of fact, I did knock down Grok And boy, in the next turn, they tied Grok up and threw his weapon aside. So if he did get up, he didn't have anything on him. And then I think they went after Seamus too, who I think had also died at that point. Were going after him. You know, it just goes to show you how dice can affect things. And this is what happened. The last 25 minutes, maybe 30. You know, we're all like looking at the clock. It's like 1:30 in the morning. And I asked, as a good DM, hopefully, look, do you guys want to continue? Do you want to do we want to stop? And so everybody was like, good, let's finish this. And the last 25 minutes or so, my dice went dead. And I still outnumbered them. But I suddenly couldn't hit jack shit. I mean, I just couldn't hit anything. I was rolling 3s and 4s and 7s. And everybody else finally was starting to come back. And by the end of this, and they ended up defeating, number 5 actually did end up dropping. Finally, he was like one of the last ones to drop. But they turned the tide. Suddenly they were using the last bits of spells they had, bringing people up with only like maybe a handful of hit points, and finally really started to hit the enemy. Because at that point, so many of my orcs had moved forward, so they were not at range anymore because of bloodlust and because they were just knocking people down left and right. And they thought, all right, more prisoners, more wealth, more weapons, let's do this. And, and that really makes for a really fun, dynamic encounter. Where there's like doom at the very beginning, and man, you feel like, oh my God, we're gonna die. This is done. And that permeated over the table for a really long time. We're talking like 2 hours of like, oh gosh, we are toast. There were so many, it was like a heartbeat. Heartbeat on a graph, like beep, beep, or like a Bill Cosby one, beep, beep, beep. I mean, it was just like, oh, we're doing good. Oh, we're doing bad. Oh, we're doing good. Oh, we're doing bad. Like over and over and over again. All right. I actually got to do my Bill Cosby impression Saturday night, which is rare. I don't get to do that. I don't even know how we got on that. But anyway, the heroes won, but by the skin of their teeth. So it was a good, fun dynamic. And I don't know what it is about Butterskull Ranch, but that is kind of what happened the first time, not to that severity, but it happened in a smaller, like a micro way. The first time I did it, and the second time was just a roller coaster. So guys, that's it. That's all I got for you. That is Butterskull Ranch. We're gonna play actually this Saturday. No, next Saturday. No, wait. What are we doing? I'm losing. We're playing very, very soon, May 1st, whenever that is. I don't even know what day it is anymore. Does anybody keep track of days? We're playing again soon. We're gonna pick up right where we left off. There is a hell of a lot to do still, but things are culminating closer and closer to the end of this adventure. All right, guys, that's it. See you in the next one.